So there's a subject I've wanted to talk about for a little while now, but I've been holding off until I had the right words and I saw enough of the conversation that it kind of just pushed me over the edge. And I say conversation, and it's more like debate and controversy kind of rolled into conversation. But there's not a whole lot of conversing going on. There's not a lot of people like asking about the subject and wanting to know more. There's just a lot of people saying really stupid things. I've been in the service industry for 7 years now. I've done a little bit of everything across the board. I started out as a dishwasher, then I was a busboy, then I became a server, and I've done that ever since for years now. Probably about after the first 6 months that I got into the industry. I also ended up doing bartending, and I've also, obviously, in many of these positions, you do many other things. You're a food runner, you're a host, you're a bar back, you do a little bit of it all, which that'll be covered in this as well. I've also done management. I've ran the entire front of house in a very busy, large staff restaurant. I did that for several months. Like, it wasn't my long-term position or anything, but I've done it. I have experience in coaching people, training them, dealing with guest issues, solving those various problems, making good business decisions for the business I represented as I did this job. And so I have like a lot of perspective from like every angle of this. And on top of that, I try to just be an observant person who pays attention to things and tries to be informed on what's going on. Listen to things the managers say, listen to the things that the other, my coworkers say, listen to what the guests say. Just in general, paying attention and absorbing information is very important. So the controversy that I'm seeing here is obviously people that don't understand the basics of economics. They don't understand the basics of the service industry, specifically, full service restaurants. And then there's also the server side or service side, because it's servers and bartenders and other people. Just as a fellow server, as a fellow bartender, as somebody who's in this business with you, I get it. We all get proud of the amount of money we might make in a night or a shift or in a week or whatever, and taking home that cash that day. But you got to chill. Like, keep your money your own business, or your business between you and your coworkers, and friends. Posting TikToks and Snapchats and Reels and all this kind of stuff to social media, it blows up in our faces, and it's unnecessary. Because believe it or not, and this is one of the subjects that I want to cover, there are people who will not like the fact that you made money. Right. Even though that money was handed to you by other people for your services. So, number one thing I want to cover here, I'll get to a lot of these things more in depth, but just the economics of the service industry, I think a lot of people don't really understand. This is not a business that people get into to make buku bucks, like just make so much money, just be filthy rich. Even the companies, the big ones, the big corporations, many of them are not working on very high profit margins. Many are working on very slim profit margins. Again, specifically the full service restaurants. When you get to some of these other restaurants, it's a little bit different, but even then, all service, like restaurants have pretty slim profit margins. So when you look at catering and food trucks and fast food, they're all kind of in this like 6 to 9% range when it comes to profit, like how much money that the business actually makes as profit after covering all other expenses. And of course, there's going to be variance there. Then you have like cafes and such that apparently can make up to 15%. That's still pretty, like, that can be really high, but it's also can be just as low as full service restaurants at 2.5%. These are like averages, of course. There are going to be restaurants and brands and chains out there that make better percentages and others that make worse. But full service restaurants, and the reason we're talking about this is because it's what I'm in. And it's what most of this controversy seems to come from when it comes to tipping and wages and things like that. 2 to 4% is the profit margin. Now, like, obviously can be, I'm looking at Lightspeed here, and they're showing 2 to 6% profit margin. Generally refers to full service restaurants, because that's across the board, which are establishments that include kitchen staff, managers, servers, bartenders, and a host at minimum. However, these numbers can vary greatly depending on factors like restaurant size, price range, turnover rates, location, and more. So the thing is, when people are running a business in the restaurant industry, regardless of what scale they are, there's essentially the big three. There's the cost of the goods that are sold, there's labor expense, and there's overhead expenses. So these are essentially all should take up about a third of the cost of doing business. The thing is, people don't think about this in restaurants. Food is expensive, especially food product that has to still be prepared and cooked. You know, it's not all frozen and super processed stuff like in fast food or whatever. But in general, food is expensive. Food product is expensive. And you don't know how much of that is going to be, we call it waste, right? You could pull in all this food, you could sell it all, but there's going to be a level of waste because there's going to be some food that's just not able to be sold because of being bad or it was defective or something like that. Or you could have a guest that orders a steak and they say, oh, I want this steak to be medium rare. Well, it comes out just a little bit more cooked than they like. Even if it's pretty much on scale with what medium rare is, they have a different standard in their head. Of course, you don't argue with the guest. You take the food back. You make them another steak. And that steak pretty much always gets thrown away. Now, yeah, there's rare occasions, or there is occasions where a server or somebody may be able to grab it and take it aside and have it as a snack or a dinner for that night. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a cost to the business. The business just ate the cost of that steak to make sure that their guest is happy. And this happens a lot more often than you think. And it can be all sorts of things. It can be a steak. It can be a cup of soda. It could be an alcoholic beverage, which in that case, your alcohol is expensive. You can do your best to make sure you use all your product, you prepare all your product correctly, and you still are going to have waste. And waste with food is expensive. So that alone is a very expensive aspect of this business. But then you move on to labor, and what you pay people is pretty much the biggest cost of doing business in almost every line of business. Restaurants, it's either second or first, depending on the cost of your food and how much you can keep your waste down. Labor may end up actually being your most expensive. Now, there's a lot of argument out there from people on not tipping when it comes to servers and food runners, bartenders, whatever. And they make this argument of, well, why don't you just have the business pay them an appropriate wage, right? Well, what's an appropriate wage? Because you want good food, you want food prepared well, you want it made on time, and you want to be able to sit at a table and have someone else make it for you and then have it hand delivered to you by somebody who greeted you, was friendly, made you feel comfortable, gave you suggestions, answered your questions on the menu. If you don't know the menu very well, they walked you through it, helped you order things, and they accurately took your order. They accurately entered the order into the system. They made sure by checking on the kitchen and doing other various tasks themselves that your food made it out to you in a timely fashion so that you could enjoy it, and checked on you to make sure your food was good, to make sure there wasn't anything else you needed, made sure you had drink refills. Your server is doing all that, right? They are paid a lower wage because you tip them. You tip them based on how good their service was, how much you enjoyed your experience in the restaurant. This is called merit-based pay. Not everyone deserves a 22%, a 20%, or 18% tip. Some servers are not as good at their job as you would like them to be, or some servers in that moment even if overall they do a good job, may not have done as good a job as they could have for you. Or maybe they let all the other stresses of all the other BS that they're dealing with behind the scenes and the other guests that they dealt with all day get to them and cause them to, in some way, shape, or form, give you subpar service. What do you do then? You tip them less, right? You answer a survey and you give feedback on that service. Those surveys you get on a Ziosk or a Presto or any of those devices actually are quite important to your server and to the restaurant in general, because they will often affect things like the hours that they get to work, the pool they have for the shifts they would like, and sometimes even if they get scheduled at all, if they go down far enough. So you actually do have an impact on what that person makes and whether or not people who are good at their job keep their jobs or keep making money to stay in that job. So it's merit-based pay. To me, that is the greatest economic system. You pay me what you feel my service was worth. And if I want to make more, I put greater effort, skill, and time into making sure my service was good enough for you. Now, that is the front end side of it. And then the argument about wages. Well, that food we talked about. Having that selection you have in the menu and being able to order what you like and have it be prepared for you in the correct way. Have it not get you sick. Have it taste good. Just all these different things, these confidences you have in a kitchen full of guys or girls that are paid well enough by the hour to stay back there being sweaty, covered in grease and sodium grime and whatever else is going on back there, and making sure your food comes out to you tasting good, is hot and fresh and all that sort of thing. Those are the people that get our hourly wages. So to be able to afford to continue doing business and have food, have a kitchen staff that is reliable, that shows up, that doesn't walk out in the middle of a shift, that makes sure the food is quality in its presentation and how it's prepared, that's who gets paid the hourly wage. Because those people are not out in the dining room interacting with guests and providing a hand-foot service to you. They're back there sweating in the trenches. But tipping them doesn't really quite work out in this whole scenario. It feels more appropriate to pay them a higher wage. Most of them are making okay to decent money, depending on experience, which position they're working in the kitchen, and how well they perform, and their reliability, all those sorts of things. Again, you earn your way up, because many of them do get paid decently for what they do. And so if you're in a good restaurant where your food is coming out at a good time, it tastes good, it's not undercooked, it's not overcooked, whatever the case is, it's probably because there are well-paid cooks in the back, or there are people that want to be well-paid cooks putting in the effort in the back. So there's a balance here. You pay the servers and the front of house staff usually less than minimum wage, because you're paying those guys in the back typically a decent amount above minimum wage to keep them in that position. It's harder to keep somebody in that position than it is to keep somebody in a clean social position out front. Now, the stresses of the social position are very different and can be pretty bad in their own ways, but it's very different. It's very hard to retain good quality kitchen staff, so you pay them more. That jacks up your labor cost. So you make up for that by having your service staff, the people who are directly interacting with your guests, who are trying to make sales to your guests, who are trying to maintain the brand image out there. You pay them less, because if you don't, and it's not made up for in tipping and merit-based pay, you're not going to have that 2 to 4% profit margin, because food is expensive, paying the kitchen is expensive, and the overhead expenses, those are expensive. You have to pay for a building. You have to pay for electricity. And Restaurants use a lot of electricity. You have to pay for maintaining your equipment. Like, this stuff breaks over time. Like, yeah, there's some of it you can keep going for 20 years, and some of it can be reliable, but it takes maintenance. It, like a dishwashing machine, those things break a lot. And do you know, it's very expensive to call out a service person, even when you're a big corporation, a corporate chain that has money in the bank. It's still a lot of expense to put out to maintain your fryers, your grill, the fans, the freezers, the bar cap, freezers, or excuse me, refrigerators. There's so many different things that can break and need to be fixed, and because they have to be, or the restaurant cannot operate. As simple as that. AC goes out. Well, you're not going to have many guests staying in the building trying to eat food, have a hot steak or a soup or a cold margarita when they're sweating to death. So when there's something that goes wrong, when something breaks down, it's an immediate call. And those people got to be out as soon as possible. And that's expensive. So having a lot, having a building, having electricity, having insurance, having the maintenance and repairs, like, these are all very expensive in the restaurant industry. Then you have to have management. You have to have the people that are held accountable for the performance of that building, making sure that they're the ones that are responsible and have the obligation to make sure things perform, to make sure staff know what they're doing, to make sure everybody has the proper tools to do their job. And when something goes wrong with this food item, when something goes wrong with this service, they're the ones that have to step out there and take accountability with the guest. So they get paid decently as well. They got their salary, their benefits, their vacation, all that. These are all things that have to be in place. And so it's a very expensive industry to be in. You're not there to make a fortune. You're doing it whether you're starting a business as a small-time operator or whether you're a corporation that's been doing it for 50 years. Typically, there's some level of love or passion for being in that industry. And then you do start to make a profit. You have money. But again, these are not businesses that are making money the way Amazon or Microsoft or somebody is. It's just not like that. These are businesses that are pretty much built from the ground up. And it's your people in the trenches. It's in your kitchen, your service staff, your hosts, your bartenders, all these people. It's a service-oriented job. You don't put out good service. You don't put out a product that people are enjoying right then at that moment. Word of mouth spreads, and you're not going to have business very long. You're not going to survive. So this is where we come back around to that merit-based system of tipping. It's very important because you need to have enough servers. Like there's a base amount of people that you need for many of these positions, like in your kitchen. However, you can have one or two guys in your kitchen, or one guy and then a manager jump in there to cook. They can bounce around and like have this dish started here. They can have this dish started there, whatever. And then your manager can hop back there and help them. But in your dining room, you need that coverage. You have so many guests, and a human being can only be in so many places to take care of and interact with so many people and still get things right. To have things be accurate and on time, and have people not feel like they're literally just at Sonic, having somebody skate up and hand them food. You don't go sit down in Applebee's or Chili's or Olive Garden or Cheddar's or your local breakfast joint to feel like you're at a fast food joint. If you do, then again, you probably shouldn't be going there. You should probably be not tipping. You should probably be asking for a refund, whatever's going on. Things happen on a daily basis. Maybe it was a bad day for that restaurant. It happens. There's a lot of variables at play. But the point is, you have to have that coverage. You have to have the staff in the front of house. So you may have a night or a day or whatever, depending on the size of your restaurant. A smaller restaurant may need 4 or 5 servers. That could be expensive if those people are all making 10, 12, 15 bucks an hour. And then another restaurant with a larger dining room may need 10 to 20 servers working. Think about the labor. That's insane. That's so much money. and you're just not going to extract enough money from the guests that are in the building, no matter how good your food is and how good your service is and your sales are, to make up for paying those people that much money. And on top of that, the cost of your dish, the cost of your drink, that stuff is going to skyrocket to unbelievable levels. People don't understand, if you raise the pay for a server, just servers, to just minimum wage, you are going to see drastic increases because a business exists to make money. There's no business out there that they're not called a nonprofit that does not exist to make money. Somebody somewhere has an investment. Somebody somewhere started this thing. Somebody somewhere is in charge of all this to make sure that those who have invested, that they're making money, or that there is money to turn around and reinvest into the business to improve it, you know, and to make sure that that staff on the ground level still have jobs to go to. So no matter how much you want to be virtuous and make these, you know, have people making money when they're working for you, your number one priority is always to make a profit on some level. And 2 to 4%, 2 to 5% is a minuscule profit level. So the only way that's possible, and to keep your cost going through the roof, having your food and your drink and everything be so expensive that guests no longer want to come there, and therefore your people who are now making a quote living wage don't have guests to serve, therefore don't have money coming into the business, and they don't have a job or a paycheck. So you save money on the servers, and you make up for that with tipping culture, with merit-based pay. That 18 to 20% that you may tip a server can seem like a lot on larger checks. However, if you were to increase that amount 20+% and then pay it on the check, you may not even come into the restaurant, because now you don't have a choice. You don't have the opportunity to say, okay, was my service good enough for a $20 tip? Was my service good enough for a $6 tip? You don't get that choice. It's just there. Your check is now $120 instead of $100. Now, wouldn't you rather come into a restaurant and your $100 check be a $100 check? And then the rest is left up to you. And if you're like, you know what? I had a great experience. My server was friendly. They made sure everything was good. I had a problem with this thing, but you know what? They were on top of it. They took care of me. They deserve that $20. They deserve that $25, whatever. You know, maybe you're being generous. They earned it. And I enjoyed myself. So here you go. The alternative is you jack up the prices for everybody. The server now makes minimum wage, and your check standard, instead of being $100, is now $120. Nobody receives a tip. You get subpar service because that person, instead of possibly making $20, $25, $30 an hour on tips, is now making $12 an hour. Flat rate, no tips. They have zero incentive to do anything but the bare minimum at that point. And again, before we argue, well, then they should be paid more. Yes, but do you want your check to continue to skyrocket? Do you want this business to be able to operate and be there to give you service? That's what this is all about. The servers, in a lot of ways, it's almost like they're a subcontractor. Like I said, I'm in this business. This is what I do. I rely on tips. So I give the best service I can. I try to be friendly with people, strike up conversations. You know, we have a lot of regulars. It's a local thing. You're part of the community. Even if you're in a corporate chain, you're still part of the community. And you want these people to like you. You want to not be seen at the grocery store 2 days later and have this, oh God, that was the guy that gave me that really undercooked steak. And it was so bland, and they didn't care. They didn't do anything about it. Me working for your tip ensures that I try to make sure all of that is either correct in the first place or is fixed if something does go wrong. And then again, you are essentially handing money directly to me for my effort versus handing it to the business And then the business, it trickles down to me in, minimum wage or whatever pay. So that's my argument when it comes to merit-based pay, to the tipping culture, and again, to the economics of the whole thing. Every time you increase the cost of labor, you decrease the profit margin. Business exists to make a profit. So the business, when their profit margin goes even slimmer than the extremely slim ones that restaurants operate in, they're going to make up for that. They're going to raise their prices. So your pasta dish, your nice draft beer, your margarita, your breadsticks, whatever it is, your stuff is going to incrementally get more and more expensive based on how much more labor goes up and how much they can kind of let themselves have as a buffer for profit. I'm telling you, these businesses, when it comes to restaurants, are not greedy like you think they are. They're just trying to get by. It's you can do the research yourself. I've had some of it here, but it's 2 to 5% depending. That's very slim compared to other things. So yes, they make up for it by not paying me a quote living wage. However, I make better than that when I give you good service. Because if I give you good service and you drop me $10 and I give them pretty good service and their check was a little smaller or whatever, and they drop me $7. And then this table over here, it was a bigger table. It was 6 people, they got drinks, all that, $100 check, and they give me $25. I just made like $40 in an hour. Now it shifts up and down. There may be a day where when you average it out, I made $15 an hour, but then the next day I made $35 an hour. Overall, I'm probably making $20 to $25 an hour. That's about where I am. But I usually also work fewer hours. I'm not in there working 40 hours a week because I probably want to Minecraft myself. That's just how it is. There's a certain level of social pressure and stress and anxiety that goes with doing this job. The vast majority of you don't want to do this job. So we do. And that's what we make for doing it. But again, are you upset that someone else is making money? And it's because they're putting in a lot of effort. They're putting out a lot of that, like I said, social energy. There's so many things that go into the position. The life of a server is not glamorous or easy in any way. No matter what TikTok, no matter what Reel, no matter what YouTube short, whatever it is you see where they're flashing a stack of hundreds or a whole bunch of cash or whatever, you know what it is? They're so done with everybody and everything after that weekend that they're so proud of how much money they finally came out of that with. Now, some are degenerates and they're going to go drink it away, whatever, that's their business, it's their money. Others, they're like, I can pay my car payment, And at the end of the day, they may have worked a 4-hour shift. They may have worked a double. They may work 20 hours a week. They may work 40 hours a week. It's different for everybody. But they make better than average pay doing it because of the crap they have to deal with to try and make everything work for you. So again, I feel like this argument, pay them, the company needs to pay. Well, if the company paid them what you think the company should, instead of you tipping them, company probably cuts their job, probably goes out of business in many cases. We're already seeing some of this in California. And that's just like fast food and crap. Like, it's not going to be good when this stuff hits the real service, like the restaurants, the full service restaurants. And because McDonald's has a whole lot more money than like I said, like Applebee's, to be able to absorb those costs, and even they're going to switch to automation. For a full service restaurant, you don't want that. You want the whole experience. And if you want to go get that experience and have that person do that job in such a way to earn your tip, then that's just the reality of it. Most people who work in service don't want a higher wage if they understand the economics properly. If they've been in the business a while, they understand that they make better from tips than they would if their hourly wages went up. And it keeps you coming in the door because the price of your experience, the price of your meal isn't extremely high either. So you keep coming in the door for a lowered expense because I work for a lower wage. Then you get the opportunity to decide whether my service that I performed as well as I could to earn your tip, whether it merits the tip you give me or not. I just think that is like the ultimate way to do business. It's merit-based pay. So that is kind of the reality of it. Most of you probably still aren't here. This is an extremely long video, I feel like. On the other side of this, I just got to say, look, don't be pissed off that people made money. Don't be pissed off that they're flashing their money and be like, oh, I don't want to be tipping. No. Nobody's mad that you went and earned your paycheck. Don't be mad that they earned theirs. But servers, bartenders, anybody working in this industry, stop it. Please, for the love of God, stop it. There's already enough controversy out there about tipping, about, this whole wage situation and restaurants and all that kind of thing. Don't exacerbate it by adding to it, flashing your money around. Just don't. We don't need that. It doesn't help us. It gives them the wrong impression, regardless of whether or not you should be able to do it and not have people react like this to it. They are. So just stop. Chill out. Keep your money business to yourself or to your coworker. Enjoy it with them or whatever. When you go out for drinks and be like, oh, look how much money we made tonight. That's all fine. We all get that. But don't.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.